So much football practice, so little time, so much slow motion as well. 25 teams on the field for minicamp today, and we got the next 60 minutes to take you all around the NFL like nobody else can. That includes a stop in Pittsburgh where QB1 has finally arrived. What took so long? Why were the Steelers the right spot? And is that a wedding ring on Aaron Rodgers' finger? We are live in Pittsburgh to break down the four-time MVP's arrival. We know one of Rodgers' new teammates was not there to greet him, and TJ Watt was not the only superstar missing today around the league. We will tell you who showed up, who didn't, and what it all means about big deals getting done. Welcome inside with the Insiders. I am Tom Pelissero. That is Mike Garafolo, who we have released into the wild, though not the tree-lined parking lot. You saw him in earlier today on NFL Network. He's now wearing a very form-fitting polo shirt inside the building. How's the vibes there today on a big day in Pittsburgh, Mike?
Oh, the vibes are just excellent, Tom. Actually, it's pretty quiet in here. Earlier, minicamp, the opening of minicamp, Aaron Rodgers arriving. Look, we've gone through this with him with the Jets. There was a lot of hoopla the last couple of years with his arrival there. This was the opposite. This was more of a expected arrival for many, many months. Finally occurred. And for a team that is saying, hey, we're not going to build everything around this guy. He's going to be a piece of what we do. But he fits. They feel like he fits. And the vibe between him and Mike Tomlin, which we'll get to in a second, seems like it has been really good over the last couple of months. And that is why Aaron Rodgers is here finally for a little taste of the spring session before they break and come back for training camp in the summer.
To be clear, this is not a green screen. This is not AI. Mike is really there inside the Steelers facility. And this is also not AI. It's really Aaron Rodgers wearing a number 8 practice jersey and on the field for the first time in a Steelers uniform. A months-long courtship coming to a head last week when Aaron Rodgers agreed to terms on a one-year contract that could be worth close to $20 million. Rodgers on the scene at last, and here's what he had to say about why it ended up in Pittsburgh.
I think it starts with Mike Tomlin. I mean, I've been a fan of his for a long time. There's a few iconic franchises in the NFL. I played for one of them for 18 years. This is another one of those. There's something special about, obviously, this area. So many great quarterbacks are from Pittsburgh. I feel like Pittsburgh has been a part of my career from the beginning. Again, the rapport that fell in between me and Mike made it to where, as I was going through my personal stuff, there wasn't any other option for me. It was here and I play. I don't need it. For my ego, I don't need it to keep playing. A lot of decisions that I've made over my career and life from strictly the ego, even if they turn out well, are always unfulfilling. But the decisions made from the soul are usually pretty fulfilling. So this was a decision that was best for my soul. And I felt like being here with Coach T and the guys that got here and the opportunity here was the best for me. And I'm excited to be here.
So we'll see what Aaron Rodgers' body can do. The soul is certainly willing. He seemed upbeat today, Mike, watching from afar. He looked clean-cut relative to the Aaron Rodgers who has showed up sometimes in off-seasons past. What else did you glean from his time with the reporters there?
Well, married life will do that to you, Tom. And Aaron Rodgers did confirm that is a wedding ring that he is wearing on his finger. We haven't met Brittany yet. It's like when your friend is telling you he met this new girl. It's going great. When can we meet her? We don't know. Maybe we'll all, double date at one point and finally meet Brittany. We shall see. But in the meantime, Aaron Rodgers on the field at minicamp. We saw him in the locker room before practice trying on a number of different helmets. The helmet that he's worn, as he said, for 20 years is a shut helmet. Every year, the NFL and the NFLPA, there's the recommended helmets, there's the approved helmets, the not approved helmets. He's got to now change to a different helmet. He said he can't stand the one. You can see it right there. Can't stand the one he's wearing right there. Look, that's part of why he's here right now, is just to get a little bit of a taste. Didn't know where he was going in the building. Had to ask directions from Bert Lawton, the head of media relations for the Steelers. Where's this? Where's that? Figuring out the building, because remember, when they go to training camp, it's not here. It's going to be in Latrobe. So he wants to get to know the building a little bit, get to know his teammates. It's also a mandatory part of the spring He wasn't under contract. If he didn't sign, he wouldn't have to be here. But you know what? The rest of the team, it's mandatory. I'm going to be a part of this. I'm going to start to build the rapport and get to know guys and be around. He did not, as you can see right here, did not take any reps during the team portion of practice. He said he was willing to do that, but Mike Tomlin said, no, relax, stay to the side for now. We actually asked Tomlin about that, and he said, I'll be honest with you, the reps in June are more important for guys like, let's say, Will Howard, the young guys, because they've got to get caught up to speed so that they're ready in training camp. So that's the trust that Tomlin has in Aaron Rodgers, the fact that he hasn't been around all spring. He's listening to the play calls in the headset because he's got to learn the terminology. You'd think we're late in the process, but they have that much confidence in him to get caught up that they're giving the reps to some of these younger guys here and believe that he is going to be ready to go come week one once he gets his work in training camp. He's had some throwing sessions with DK Metcalf alone. Now he got to have at least a little bit here in Pittsburgh, Tom.
Aaron Rodgers was also asked about how long it will take him to pick up all that stuff with the language and the scheme in the office. He said, well, probably a couple of weeks. Well, you had a couple of weeks if you had showed up sooner here. Instead, he's got like 2-3 days on the field in minicamp. But he also said this was about wanting to make sure that the other things he was dealing with in his personal life were resolved or at least improved that he was going through during the spring. He wanted to make sure once he arrived, he was all in. That's something that took place really over the past week here. And now here we go. Once again, Aaron Rodgers arriving with great fanfare on a team that's got really, really high hopes. Certainly the Steelers hoping that this ends better than the last time Aaron Rodgers made his debut at MetLife Stadium, which lasted all of 4 snaps during his first season with the Jets. So Aaron Rodgers on hand for the mandatory minicamp. There were some other players around the NFL who were not there for the mandatory minicamp. That included Trey Hendrickson holding out in Cincinnati while awaiting a new contract. Jonnu Smith, Jalen Ramsey, who was excused, Terry McLaurin, and then one guy, Mike, right there in Pittsburgh, who's a pretty important piece of that team as well.
T.J. Watt in the last year of his deal, Tom, making, I think it's $21 million this year. We're looking at pass rushers on the top end of the market up to around $40 million per year. Look, these other names on the list, and you're going to get into some of them in just a short bit, they're more contentious than this one. I don't feel that this one is contentious. You don't have to fine a player. Like, we talk about these fines that could add up to over $100,000 if a player misses mandatory minicamp over the next couple of days. You don't have to fine a player, so we'll see what the Steelers wind up doing on this one. I know that they feel really good about the talks that they've had and the offers that they've made. They also have a lot of confidence in T.J. Watt. In fact, they were talking about, while we're talking right now, he's probably literally working out right now. Mike Tomlin has the belief that T.J. Watt is going to be just fine working away from the facility. So they're not stressing about that part of it. If there was a pressure point right now, and the start of training camp seems like it's a pressure point, I feel like this thing would get done, and it will get done at some point. I don't sense any long-term concerns about T.J. Watt, despite the fact that he's throwing up that peace sign in that picture he posted on Instagram, a couple of weeks ago, and people freaked out about?
That has been an ongoing situation for months with T.J. Watt. Everybody knew with those other pass rushers getting paid, Myles Garrett, Max Crosby, Danielle Hunter on a 1-year big money extension. T.J. Watt was going to want his eventually, kind of similar with Terry McLaurin. This is something that was percolating all the way back at the Combine, that at some point here with the wide receiver market exploding, McLaurin, who's due a little under $20 million in 2025, was going to be seeking a contract upgrade. Not only did he have Jamar Chase, who blew out of the water the top contract in the market, his teammate T. Higgins got a deal that's worth more annually than Terry McLaurin is making right now. It's still the second week of June. There's not necessarily a pressure point right now. 5-6 weeks until training camp. Let's see where we are as they try to work toward this deal. And as for Trey Hendrickson, this has been playing out very publicly in Cincinnati, where Hendrickson traveled a few weeks ago to get in front of the media on an open practice day and explain all the reasons that he was not going to play on his existing contract, which is due to pay him $16.5 million this season. The top of that market now is $40 million per year with Myles Garrett. Trey Hendrickson, who signed a 1-year extension 2 off seasons ago. That's why he's under contract for 2025. He doesn't want another 1-year extension here. So can they come to a number that makes sense on a multi-year contract? You hate to say anything is close, because there is no close. It's either done or it's not. Right now, it is not done with Trey Hendrickson here. Can't rule out the possibility they could do something to get him in for the mandatory minicamp, but as of now, he is not there. One of his new teammates, the guy they plan to play on the other side of the line, Shamar Stewart, is there in Cincinnati, the number 17 overall draft pick. But at this point, Shemar Stewart does not have a contract, so he is not practicing, has not signed a participation agreement, and he had some thoughts on that whole situation today.
I still go to meetings. I still study my playbook, take down the right notes, and then whenever I get some free time, I go out to train. I'm 100% right, so it should be a no-brainer. And in Trey's case, I think it should be a no-brainer too. I mean, he led 17.5 sacks for 2 years back-to-back. If I was the GM or I was the owner, take all my money. But I guess they don't operate like that.
A dispute over contract language keeping Shemar Stewart away for the time being. Micah Parsons also is up for a new contract, but he is at least in attendance today. He's told reporters he was dealing with back tightness, could perhaps also just be a little bit of wallet tightness for Micah Parsons, but new coach Brian Schottenheimer happy that both Micah and Trayvon Diggs showed up on day one.
I think it just shows you that he's serious about what we've talked about, which is developing that leadership mentality, the mindset to be a guy that we can count on, and not just the fourth quarter when he's got to, make a big sack or get pressure on the quarterback, but just in general throughout the course of a week. And it's a long season. We all know that. And my conversations with Micah have been great. He'll be out on the field doing some stuff. Yep. It's actually great. Trayvon got here early. It's great to see him. He's one of the first guys I saw, and he got his rehab stuff in with Britt. So both guys were excited to be here.
Trayvon Diggs still long road back from his injury. James Cook is healthy, was actually on the field today. Had skipped all of the voluntary portions of the offseason schedule while seeking his new contract. They had talks way back February and March after the season, weren't able to get a deal done, but after conversations today, Cook decided to be on the field. As for why he showed up, he told reporters, "I like my money. That's why I'm here." Fines for missing all 3 days would total a little over $100,000. Kirk Cousins also likes his money. He chose to show up on day one of the Falcons minicamp, even though Cousins had made abundantly clear early in the offseason that he would love to be playing quarterback somewhere and not backing up that guy, Michael Penix Jr. Cousins today, speaking to reporters for the first time in quite a while, also making clear that at this point, his focus is moving forward.
Michael's going to do great. He's going to have a great career. He's off to a great start. He's got all the tangibles and intangibles you need to be successful, and I'm just here to support him, as he needs it.
Man, just getting better. Being better than I was last year, being better than I was yesterday and today. Each and every day, just working on improving. On the field, off the field, building connections, relationships with my teammates. It's a lot of different aspects that go into that, in order for, this team to have the season that we want to have this year.
Mike, we know this. The Falcons were so high on Michael Penix Jr., they were willing to take him number 8 overall in the 2024 draft, just 6 weeks after they had signed Kirk Cousins to a deal including $100 million guaranteed. No question. When I asked Raheem Morris back at the Combine, is there any scenario where Kirk could beat out Penix? He said, Penix is our starter. And in listening to Kirk's words there, too, when he said those are things we talked about months ago and now we move forward, I can't help but think this is a guy who's got a no-trade clause. And even if something materializes at some point during camp, the preseason, or the regular season, Kirk might go, my best opportunity to show I can still play high-quality football might be if a situation, injury, or otherwise arises right there in Atlanta.
Yeah, well, listen, if you're the Falcons and there isn't a big injury elsewhere, remember that Eagles-Sam Bradford trade from a couple of years ago, more than a couple of years ago, but remember that trade, and the Eagles had the ability to trade him then for a first-round pick, because at that point, if you're a team that's in contention and your starter goes down, you don't have a backup that you want to turn it over to, you get a little desperate, and all of a sudden now you're willing to bid higher than you were the entire offseason. So that's one reason why the Falcons could wind up looking smart by holding on to Kirk Cousins. The other one, if there is an injury to Michael Penix, you're right. Kirk Cousins being your backup, one of the better options that the Falcons have as it pertains to backup quarterbacks throughout this entire league. And you talked about a couple of months ago when they went through all these things, Kirk Cousins had that no-trade clause, which allowed him to say to the Falcons, don't even agree to a trade before the draft, because I'm not going to accept that, because he was worried that what happened to him in Atlanta could have happened to him potentially again. So this has been a little bit of a back and forth when it comes to the leverage in this case. The Falcons had it, then Cousins had it. It feels like it's kind of gone back and forth. And now the Falcons kind of have it when it pertains to whether he stays or goes, because there's not a lot of options. There are no other options really from a starting standpoint. There are no other options for a team willing to take on all of that money. It could change if there's an injury or some kind of situation where a team needs that, whether it's in training camp, into the preseason, maybe even early in the season. So there's really no way of predicting this. At this point, what Cousins is saying, control what you can control, be the best employee, the best backup that he can be in Atlanta at this point, and then we'll see where it goes.
A $27.5 million backup, fully guaranteed in 2025, also has $10 million fully guaranteed in 2026. Falcons have not wanted to eat a substantial chunk of that money. Just one of the reasons that right now, Kirk Cousins is still in Atlanta. Justin Herbert is still in L.A. Breaking news right there. He's the Chargers quarterback. He's on the field, and he's got a big fan in Jim Harbaugh. You're not going to want to miss what Harbaugh had to say about Justin Herbert as they kicked off minicamp today. Our Omar Ruiz was there, and next he's here with us on the Insiders. 25 teams on the field for minicamp today, including the big boys with the Chargers right there in El Segundo. Rashawn Slater, who's still awaiting a new deal, as well as last year's first-round pick. Joe Alt on the field, getting ready to protect a quarterback that, well, it's safe to say, Jim Harbaugh likes a lot.
The best, expectation is, setting the example, of work ethic and training, You would at least be aspiring to train at his level and to compete at his level and to work at his level. I know it motivates me every day.
Welcome back to the Insiders. Tom Pelissero, Mike Garafolo, and a guy that motivates us every day, Omar Ruiz. Omar, you were there at Chargers minicamp today. What else did Jim Harbaugh have to say about Justin Herbert?
Well, Jim Harbaugh, whenever he speaks about Justin Herbert, you guys know he gushes about him. So I asked, what he would like to see from him in minicamp, and a lot of what he said had to do with that soundbite right there. How Justin Herbert, he hopes, will continue to elevate those around him by those players aspiring to work like Justin Herbert and really follow his lead in that way. And Harbaugh identified Herbert as one of 9 players that he says are elite on the roster. And I'm not going to leave any of these guys out, so I'm going to read it off. But those players were Herbert, Derwin James, Khalil Mack, Joe Alt, Ladd McConkey, Zion Johnson, Rashawn Slater, Tuli Tuipulotu, Deion Henley. Those are the 9 that Harbaugh has no problem identifying and singling out amongst the team. Derwin James telling me that those are the 9 players that he tells in team meetings he wants players to ascend to. So Herbert, he says, is always going to play at his elite level. He's going to practice at that elite level. He's going to work at that elite level. What they're hoping for is now that those 9 players are the tide, and the tide rises all boats, and the rest of the team elevate in that way. And Harbaugh telling me that there's plenty of room for other players in that elite category, and if they have enough of those that reach that, they feel like they can go pretty deep so far in the playoffs this year.
It's bothering me. It's the Elite 8, right? So you got to come up with something different, like the Fine 9 or something like that. That's the Elite 8 is one off. It's bothering me.
You're a March Madness fiend,
What
Mike.
else? Yeah, right, exactly. What else is Harbaugh emphasizing for this team in minicamp, Omar, other than crisply ironed khakis?
Well, Harbaugh always emphasizes physicality, right? So I asked him how in this non-padded, non-physical practices, the setting that minicamps are, how do they instill that physicality? He told me that they're not going to instill the physicality that they're going to see in the fall, that he wants the team to play with. What he does want to see is polish. He said that is an old school term. He says that people don't use anymore, but he wants to have his team polished in that they're trying to be perfect in everything that they do. And he wants everybody to know exactly what they are doing. You see the way Ladd McConkey runs routes, to have so fine for their assignments on the field that it translates at every level, and they are ready to go once they are able to implement the physicality portion of the year in training camp. So it is the technique, especially on the offensive line. Guys, he wants to see with those explosive first steps, those 6 inches tending to be perfect, and then they get greedy on the second and third steps. And you mentioned coming into this segment, Tom, that Rashawn Slater was there in attendance. Speaking of those O-line, those perfect techniques, Slater participating in the mandatory minicamp portion, obviously going into the last year of his rookie contract, working for a bigger deal. But Slater's presence, another indicator that these Chargers believe they have something special in the building with that culture. They're looking to get, obviously, further than the wild card round of the playoffs. Slater's presence, just like the rest of the star players, most of the rest of the star players have been very active. They've had a high participation percentage for those star players in most of the offseason, all working toward what they expect to be an even better team in 2025 for these LA Chargers.
Omar, thank you. More from you a little bit later. One guy who will not be back with Jim Harbaugh in LA this season is last year's top running back. J.K. Dobbins agreeing to terms today with an AFC West rival. He is headed to Denver on a one-year deal that could be worth up to $5.25 million. Comeback Player of the Year. Finalist last year, Dobbins, of course, has dealt with multiple major injuries in his career, but still, when he has been on the field, one of the most efficient backs in the NFL, and now pairing up with a high draft pick in Denver. Anthony Richardson, a high draft pick several years ago. Injuries have been the early story of his career. They're also the story of the offseason, dealing with a shoulder issue. He recently got a second opinion. Coach Shane Steichen said today it is the AC joint that he injured back in 2023. Dealing with soreness. No alarm bells at this point, but more missed reps this week at a time that he is in a competition with Daniel Jones. Also, the Colts this week announcing officially their new ownership structure. Jim Irsay, the longtime owner and CEO, passed away last month at age 65. His daughters, Carly, Casey, and Kaylin, are now taking over the team, with Carly Irsay Gordon serving as the controlling owner. Here is what she had to say today about her vision for her team.
We are so proud to continue our dad's legacy, beginning with carrying out his foremost wish to keep the Colts in our family. We want our fans to know that we've spent decades in our family business learning every aspect of our organization under our dad's leadership.
A lot more to come here on the Insiders. The Dolphins also out on the field for minicamp today. And Tyreek Hill, first time since wrist surgery, he's catching some passes. What does it mean for the direction of this Dolphins offense in 2025? Cameron Wolf was there. Next, he'll be here, and he'll tell us on the Insider.
A steamy minicamp down there in Miami. The Dolphins mandatory minicamp, one of the many opening today. Tua Tagovailoa to Malik Washington there. Possible breakout candidate this year. We'll see. Some of us think so. Some of us think maybe not. We'll see. Meantime, here's Mike McDaniel on the philosophy for the Dolphins this season.
Being able to feel a team in 7 weeks, I've gotten to that point where I have an idea of a team. Not exactly what it's going to look like. They'll define that by their daily work. But the elements of a team that you can only really create through blood, sweat, tears. Failure is the key, because too many people are avoiding failure in life and in football.
Yep, I agree with that. That is some wise, sage advice there from Mike McDaniel on life and football. Cameron Wolf joining us now. Cam, you got to read between the lines on this and what Tua Tagovailoa had to say about the team chemistry, because it's not like there's been wholesale changes to the roster, just a couple of guys that were not necessarily there anymore, but you're talking about team and chemistry and all this stuff. The buzzwords keep buzzing for the Dolphins. What is it about this team that they want to see such better chemistry in 25?
Yeah, the biggest thing I saw from Tua is a different look. Every year he looks a little different than he did the year before. But for them, they're trying to change a culture that, from the perception from the outside, is soft. That's a word they've heard a lot, and they cringe with the idea of it. But look, it's not going to change through June words, and I think the team knows that. They're saying the right things at this stage, but we're going to see the action when it comes in the fall and December practice. I think the most interesting thing Tua said today was discussing his progress through the injuries, because that's really the question mark when we talk about Tua. Obviously, he had the concussion last year. He had the hip injury late last season. He said that he got healthy around February from that hip injury. He wouldn't say exactly what it was, but he said that as long as he protects himself better, it won't be reoccurring. And really, that's been a focus point for him throughout OTAs and minicamp, getting the ball out quicker, making those decisions where last year he wanted to run somebody over or lower his shoulder to prove that he was tough enough. He said, I got to make a different mindset decision because my availability is key. He's planning on throwing the ball away more, sliding more, and not wanting to be that superhero that risks his availability as it has in the past. And so he has to lead through that. But I have heard he's been more vocal in the building. He talked about practicing with guys even outside of the practice time. And that takes me to Tyreek Hill, his top weapon, who is coming off a tumultuous end of the season, taking himself out of the game, asking out, and then everything that's happened in the offseason. He's recovering from that wrist injury. I watched him today catch passes for the first time we've seen since he's had that wrist surgery. You could tell he was still getting comfortable. He dropped one pass, he caught a few others, but it's a great sign for his recovery. Mike McDaniel said at the combine the hope was for him to be able to start catching passes by training camp, and so the fact that he's already trying at this stage of minicamp shows that he's in good pace for the regular season. He's been vocal throughout practices, and they expect to see a different version of Tyreek than we saw late in the season. Tua did mention he's practiced with Tyreek some of those routes on air and trying to get ready for this season that they hope is going to be a little bit more smoother in December and January than it has in the past.
It is interesting when you talk about the changeover in culture, the new culture, and making sure everybody's bought in, that a guy who was frankly asking out is still a part of the team and still expected to be a key part. That's the trust that they have in Tyreek Hill, that he's going to be eyes forward this year in 2025. Jonnu Smith, the tight end, Jalen Ramsey, the cornerback, not there at minicamp for two different reasons. And excuse what he got there.
Yeah, two completely different reasons for Jonnu Smith and Jalen Ramsey's absence. Let's start with Jonnu Smith. Jonnu Smith wants a new contract. He's set to make $4.1 million last year. He's coming off an excellent season, the best tight end season in Miami history, and he wants that bag. And right now, they haven't been able to get to a contract. From what I've been told, this has been going on for multiple months. And then Jonnu made the decision not to show up for mandatory minicamp. It was not excused, so he is potentially getting fined over $100,000 for missing this week. And that's where some of those trade talks we've heard with Jonnu come up. Right now, both sides would like to get something done. We're going to have a month or a month and a half until training camp to see if that's done, but he's a key part of the weapon. Tua said today he's team paid Jonnu. He said he's thrown a couple of times with Jonnu outside of the facility, and so the hope is that he gets something done there. As far as Jalen Ramsey, it's not a money deal. It's a relationship deal, and this is a divorce that is just waiting a ending. At this stage, he is staying away. They excused him for practice. He will not be fined. This is a situation where both sides are working together to find that right trade partner. He's still due $21 million in guaranteed money, and they've got to figure out that money before finding the right partner. So this could be something that still lingers until training camp, until somebody find a right partner. But two guys who are, for different reasons, not here for Miami.
Sometimes you see these trade situations get resolved right before training camp. It's like, let's just move on. Let's not even bring this into training camp. Let's get the best deal that we could possibly get. Let's eat as much money as we possibly have. Again, you need that pressure point. Could be the start of training camp for the Miami Dolphins. Cameron Wolfe will be there at the start of training camp to see if Jalen Ramsey is there and what the Dolphins are going to look like in 25. Morgan Moses just there, walking into the building, a free agent signing from the New England Patriots. A just enormous human being, an enormous presence for the Patriots, as a lot of people think this could be the team that maybe gets close to flipping its record under Mike Vrabel, with a schedule that lines up pretty, I don't want to say easily for them, but pretty nicely for them. We shall see. The work begins in the spring, continues into the summer. Stephon Diggs there for the end of the spring, asked about that video of him on a boat, and he pretty much said, mind ya.
I kind of like have a thing where talk about my personal life with people I don't know personally. I'm pretty sure everybody here, men and women, are great people, but you know what I'm saying, I kind of keep my personal life personal. I had a conversation with Graves, obviously. I'm going to echo everything that he said. He told me, hoping everybody making good decisions, you know what I'm saying. And I had a conversation with people in the building as well, so, everything else is everything else.
The Browns feel they made a good decision locking up Myles Garrett on a 4-year, $160 million contract extension this offseason, mainly because this is what he looks like. It's not AI. It's not Photoshop. I'm not really sure what that is. Myles Garrett has muscles on top of muscles, and he also has some thoughts on being back in Cleveland.
I mean, I look forward to having my best season for sure, and I think it's trending that way. Feeling really good, and I think everything's pointing in that direction. And I like where we are as a defense unit. It's really firing, really rolling, and I think it's really clicking as far as the scheme and the plays, especially early on. That's big. I think it's a good opportunity to put them in the graveyard.
Time now for Count on It, presented by Toro. Tom Pelissero, joined now by Brian Baldinger. To be clear, Baldy, for anyone watching at home, he's talking about the graveyard in his front yard where he has the tombstones every Halloween. The kids can see it. Not the literal graveyard, although Aaron Rodgers is 41 years old. Some bad things potentially could happen here. Let me ask you this, Baldy. We know Myles Garrett's a really good player. They do have talent on this team, but can Browns fans count on their squad being more competitive in the AFC North in 2025?
Well, I mean, look, right now they've got Joe Flacco penciled in as a starter, right? I mean, that's kind of what we're led to believe right now. It could change, but it just so happened that Myles Garrett became the defensive player of the year that Joe Flacco took over and led him to the playoffs, winning 4 of his 5 starts down the stretch and getting him to wild card weekend. And so for Myles, I mean, it starts with, look, Myles can go out and be the defensive player of the year again. And they might win 4 games if they don't score more points than they did a year ago. And so, I think the offensive line should be good. I think Kevin Stefanski knows how to call plays. I think they've got some weapons. They need a quarterback to play a whole lot better than any of the 4 starters did a year ago. And if they do that, if they score more points, where Myles Garrett gets a chance to really get after Aaron Rodgers week 6, get after some of these quarterbacks, to start the season right now, whether, it's week 1 against Cincinnati, whatever it might be, it's a lot easier to get after him if you got a lead in the 4th quarter. And so I think that's what Myles Garrett's like. All right, Joe Flacco, come in, do what you did. Let's score some points. Let's put our Jim Schwartz-led defense, myself, Mason Graham, let's get some dogs out there to get after these quarterbacks with the lead in the 4th quarter, something they rarely saw a year ago.
Aaron Rodgers trailing with Myles Garrett pass rushing on the other side. Not a situation he wants to be in. But he did sign up for this, Baldy. He arrived in Pittsburgh, QB1, finally joining the Steelers. Baldy back after this with more on the story of minicamp week. Aaron Rodgers making his debut in a Steelers uniform. Our Mike Garafolo is in Pittsburgh. Him and Baldy with us next to break down all angles on the Insiders. A lot of news around the NFL today, including a veteran player ended up in Buffalo. This time it is linebacker Shaq Thompson, the longtime Carolina Panther, agreeing to terms on a 1-year contract with the Bills. Walter Nolan, one of the handful of remaining unsigned first-round draft picks, agreeing to his rookie contract with the Cardinals. And the Vikings extending tight end Josh Oliver, another free agent acquisition a couple years ago by Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and his staff, agreeing now on a new contract as they build that thing out around J.J. McCarthy. Aaron Rodgers finally agreed to his contract with the Steelers last week, a 1-year deal worth up to close to $20 million. Got his first taste of practicing with the Steelers today, then faced the media and wanted to make clear he's not trying to run the Aaron Rodgers offense.
I don't understand that last term, take over when I see fit. I mean, I've called some 2 minutes over the years, but the idea that somehow I need to or have spent most of my career playing outside of an offensive system is just not correct. So I'm going to learn the offense, and Arthur and I are going to talk a bunch this summer. And if there's things that I like that I'd like to see in the offense, Arthur, I'm sure, is going to put it in. But he knows how to call a game. I know how to get us in the right spot based on what's called. There's 2 or 3 plays called in the huddle sometimes. My job is to get us in the right play. DK's been blowing me up for a while. We got to get together out west, but I've gone against him a number of times. He's big, athletic, fast, got great hands, ball skills. But the thing that really excites me the most is his character. I think he's a high character guy.
When you play 21 NFL seasons, you eventually get some opportunities to take down some notable records, including one owned by his former teammate Brett Favre. Needs 6 pass touchdowns, surpassed Favre for 4th most of all time, among many, many other things. He's got the opportunity to become the 5th quarterback to beat all 32 teams because he does get to face the Packers in Week 8 of this season. Welcome back to the Insiders. Tom Pelissero, Mike Garafolo, and Brian Baldinger here. Baldy, I'll start with you. In your mind, obviously a lot of attention comes with Aaron Rodgers entering Pittsburgh. All the attention. They send Mike, all the way to Pittsburgh for this thing here. In your mind, what is the benchmark for this season to be a success for Rodgers and the Steelers?
Well, the Steelers haven't won a playoff game in 8 years. I mean, this is 19th year for Mike Tomlin. A playoff win is the benchmark. That's where it's got to start. Otherwise, why are they investing in a 41-year-old quarterback? They're there to win playoff games. And if anybody that's been around the Steelers, Mike, you're there all day today. You can't walk in that facility and not see the 6 Lombardis. So their whole goal is to get a 7. Can Aaron help them get there? It starts with winning a playoff game. And so Mike Tomlin, and then the low side of the whole thing here, Mike, is this is the 19th year for Mike Tomlin. We're well aware he doesn't have a losing season. Well, Aaron Rodgers doesn't want that on his epitaph as well. That he was there when Mike Tomlin had a losing season. So the benchmark, though, is winning a playoff game. It's just that simple right now. And the offensive line that is going to play behind, they're right behind Mike Tomlin right now. They have a chance to be very good, and maybe one of the better ones that Aaron has played behind in the last few years.
Baldy, if they go 9-8 and lose in the wild card round, it's like, well, we could have done that with Russell Wilson or Kenny Pickett or Mason Rudolph, who's currently on the roster. Like, there's got to be, especially because this is a team that they're going to be good enough where they're not going to be in prime position to draft a quarterback. It's not like they have a guy in the building. Right? At some point, they need a long-term plan at the quarterback position. So for the time being, I agree with you. They have to win a playoff game. But it's also about, and I know we've said, and you saw it there, they're going to want to run the football. I mean, that's an organizational philosophy. But since Ben Roethlisberger has retired, the Steelers have 46 touchdown passes, the fewest in the NFL. They need a guy that's going to start providing some of that in their offense right now. And Aaron Rodgers, at this point, we saw the flashes of it with the Jets. We didn't see it consistently, and he was banged up. I mean, he said today he felt pretty good last year. He was banged up. We need to see more than flashes, right? I mean, we need to see consistent vintage Rodgers.
No question. And I would argue but Tom, I would say real quick, and we have talked about this throughout the offseason. I mean, he was not good at the end of games last year. They had a great chance to beat the Minnesota Vikings in London. He missed a wide-open Garrett Wilson. They had a chance against Seattle after he threw a pick-6 to Leonard Williams to go down and win that game. They had a chance. If they could score a touchdown, Mike, you might have been in the building against Denver week 4 to win that game. And they couldn't score from the 1-yard line. He had opportunities. He couldn't. I think he's got to see that it had to be frustrating to him that he couldn't consistently put the ball where he wanted to put it. The way we're used to seeing him do it, where under any arm angle, any release, any platform, Aaron Rodgers put the ball where he wanted to put it. Like he did that for the better part of his career, and he struggled to do that last year.
You can see in that video from practice today, he still has that arm twitch. He can still get the ball out. Can he stay healthy? Can he make it happen over a full season? That's the big question. Baldy, thank you. Mike, don't move. We got to talk about C.J. Stroud, who's got his arm working once again. You can turn off those panic buttons. We'll explain after this on the Insiders. 25 teams this week around the NFL, including the Texans, who got to see C.J. Stroud back on the field. Whether it was a shoulder, a pec, general body soreness, C.J. Stroud says the issues that kept him out the past couple of weeks, no big deal, folks.
I was already throwing, before you guys see me out there pretty normally. I think y'all don't have much to talk about, so everything is blown up in the off season, so I'm fine, man. I'm really okay. The goal was just to be bigger, faster, stronger, like every off season, but be more intentional about it. So have more fluidity in my hits, lose a couple pounds, run faster, and I got all those done.
Welcome back to the Insiders. Tom Pelissero, joined once again by Omar Ruiz. Okay, Omar, so we know C.J. Stroud, from a health perspective, according to him, he's going to be just fine as we head into the break prior to training camp here. But I thought it was interesting hearing him talking about maybe trying to change his body just a little bit as the Texans try to get over that hump from being a team that's in the playoffs and winning a playoff game to getting where they really want to go.
Yeah, Tom, bigger, faster, stronger, the goals that C.J. Stroud set out for himself this offseason, and he said he hit PRs in most every category that he was shooting for, personal record. So he accomplished those goals. In the video beforehand, you saw that incredible catch by Jaden Higgins, forming chemistry with some of his new weapons. Christian Kirk has been a presence there this offseason. So C.J. Stroud and company, obviously, like you alluded to, they've won playoff games each of the last couple seasons, but looking to take that next step. And obviously holding him out from throwing during OTAs, as D'Amico Ryans described, was just precaution, trying to do what's best for C.J. Stroud and the entire football team. But Stroud saying that he's going to be throwing this summer with his guys in L.A. and trying to continue to build that camaraderie and leadership. He was also asked what he's looking forward to most about playing in new offensive coordinator Nick Caley's system, and he said the fact that he's going to be working with Caley. He said it's the chemistry and camaraderie they're forming, not necessarily the X's and O's, is what really can take this team to an ascending level. The other news out of Houston this week, they signed Nick Chubb. He was in the building participating in minicamp. C.J. Stroud saying he didn't even recognize Chubb because he is so unassuming and quiet. But D'Amico Ryans said they're just learning Nick Chubb, how he functions, how this team functions, getting him on the same page in that regard. So when training camp rolls around, they can unleash him. Ryan saying that, of course, when Nick Chubb is healthy, when he is fully rocking and rolling, one of the most dynamic players in the NFL. They're hoping to get him up to speed. And Ryan's, being a former player in the NFL, appreciates just how hard it is to come back from an injury the way Nick Chubb did, both with the knee and then obviously the foot last year. So if they can get him right there in the 25 season, an incredible added dimension to that running game with Joe Mixon and another weaponry around C.J. Stroud. As you mentioned, Tom, this team trying to get over that hump and beyond the divisional round of the playoffs this season.
Second straight season that the Texans pick up a running back, but a lot of success in the AFC North and was available for not too much. They can only hope this works out as well as Joe Mixon a year ago. Omar, thank you very much. Coming up on The Insider, Xavier Worthy might have to watch out for his 40-yard dash record. We'll explain what we mean right after this on The Insider. The Eagles announced today that Chairman and CEO Jeffrey Lurie and his family will make a $50 million donation to Children's Hospital of Philadelphia and Penn Medicine to create the Lurie Autism Institute. Lurie says the Institute's goal will be to spark a new era of scientific discovery in autism spectrum disorder. Great work by the Lurie family. Across the state, Aaron Rodgers is officially a Pittsburgh Steeler, and Mike Garafolo has decided to, I'm told, try his hand at taking down Xavier Worthy's 4.21 record in the 40-yard dash. Is that right, Mike?
We had, I knew you were going to show the stumble. We had a free block while you were doing the last segment. So we said, when Cody and I, my producer, were talking about, I said, we got to time the 40. I got to get a timed 40. So this one here was 6:02. I try to get you two to run at the combine, but you chicken bleeps won't do it. I got to beat Desmond Watson, 464 pounds at 5'9". I got to get cleats on. I'm coming for you, Desmond.
We're out of time. See you tomorrow.